Okay, welcome everyone. Today is September 9th, and this is the weekly SIG Contributor Experience meeting. I am your host, Bob Killen, one of the co-chairs. Just as a general reminder that this meeting is under the CNCF Code of Conduct, which essentially boils down to please be excellent to each other. If you have a moment, please put your name in the attendees list. Let's see, okay, good. And with that, we can kick things off. George, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm George Castro. I work at VMware. I'm a community manager, and I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Welcome, everyone, those of you that are new.
And he lives literally less than 5 minutes away from me.
Yes, it is raining today, so we're in a bad mood.
That's a great temperature, though. Does anyone else want to introduce themselves?
Sure. I'm Josh. I'm a co-founder and CTO at Orbit, where we make tools for people who build communities. And Nicola, did you introduce yourself?
Hi, very quickly at the beginning, but I don't think everybody was here already. So, hi everyone, I'm Nicolas, and I'm a software engineer here at Orbit. So, pleased to meet you all.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome.
We're in Paris, not Michigan, although I'm from Chicago. I know Michigan. I live in Paris.
Similar weather, at least, from when you were in Chicago.
Definitely.
Okay. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves? If not, we can then get on with sort of our normal recurring business. Okay. We'll try and get through our normal stand up quick, and then you all have the floor from Orbit. Okay. With that, events, office hours.
Planning will start on Friday, so I have one new panelist, and she's going to help join us. I'm going to try to revitalize the West Coast edition, but we'll see how people respond. The European session is fine.
Cool. Whoops, I accidentally just closed the notes. One sec.
You were going to say community meeting. Planning is in progress. I synced up with him yesterday. He's doing a good job, so it's there.
Okay. Next one is contributor summits. That's me, no real updates yet. Honestly, this is still on us to send out the survey if we want to do something. Steering committee election updates. Ihor, you're on the line. Would you mind giving an update?
Yeah, but actually I haven't checked the current states yet. However, we have a couple of candidates. As far as I remember, almost all candidates have submitted their bills to the community repo. So we are almost at the final stage for the elections this year. Please check GitHub at the elections. The elections directory is in the community repo for more details.
Okay, cool. Any other? I don't think there's any other events updates. So with that, should we just kick on over to? Let's kick over to mentoring and meet our contributors. I don't think Paris is on the line. Nope. As far as I know, it's still punted to, there's nothing this month, and it's going to be punted till next month. The other thing that has been, we've routinely had, this is moving on to the next item, the mentoring meetings and being rescheduled. We've routinely had problems getting people to attend the various time slots that we've tried. Currently, the most successful meeting that we've had is the new contributor workshop one at 7 p.m. ET, but that doesn't work for, that's technically still late for me, and certainly not good for anyone in the EU or other areas of the world. So we will be looking to try and find a new time slot for the EU-friendly one, and the current new contributor workshop slot will just become the sort of APAC-friendly mentoring meeting. Other discussion, Ihor, GSOC.
Yep, good news about Google Summer of Code. The program has just completed this Monday, and CNCF had 17 successful students this year who have completed the program. I don't recall the exact number of Kubernetes-only students, but we had a good number of them. However, again, 17 students is a pretty good number, and we're probably one of the biggest Google Summer of Code organizations this year with this number of students.
Awesome.
The next one is about Community Bridge. We're also making progress with this one. We have the Q3, Q4 round, which will last until December. And currently is the time for the mentors to submit their ideas to the mentoring repo of the CNCF organization on GitHub. So if you're interested in mentoring, if you have any ideas which kind of project you'd like to mentor, if you have any project ideas that you'd like the mentees to implement for you, so please read the announcement and all the information that I sent out last week to Kubernetes dev mailing list. Put the link to the meeting notes and follow the procedure there. However, we all, yep.
Do you know, did the one voting suggestion get submitted?
Yes, it was. We had 2 submissions from Kubernetes project, and one of them is about voting platform.
Okay. Does anyone else have any mentoring topics they want to talk about? Or sorry, like Ivar, I think I interrupted you.
No, that was it. So please check out the meeting notes. You can find the link to the announcement that I sent out to Kubernetes dev mailing list last week if you're looking for more information, or just DM me on Slack. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, and that takes us to community management. We have a couple items on the need to know chairs email. Is there any other? I think it's mostly about like Zoom, the launch of Kates.dev, and then potentially putting, let me pop it open. Yep, election news, volunteers for new contributor workshop. Does anyone else have any other suggestions for the need to know email? Okay. Next, APAC corner update. Doesn't look like there's any update. Next big thing is Zoom. For those that might not have been at the last meeting or heard the news, we essentially have to roll out either a passkey to every Zoom meeting by September 27th. The alternative is that the waiting room is enabled, but that won't work well for a lot of our chairs and TLs or other people that are leading meetings because they'll have to share some creds around. Right now, we just want to go, since our current practices work just fine, we want to just essentially use a universal key. If anyone has any suggestions, I tossed a couple in there, like 5 7s. Maybe it should be 7 7s. Or, you know, everyone's favorite luggage code, 1 2 3 4 5. If anyone has any other suggestions, please toss it in there and we can send something out to the list, or honestly just start going with it. Does anyone else have any community management related updates? Okay. Dev stats, Lori. Lori?
There
How about now?
you go. Yeah,
There you go.
You got it.
Cool. All right. So, not much has changed since last week because we had a holiday and people are really busy, and but maybe we make some progress this week. So basically, one action item is how can we figure out what's necessary techno-wise to embed the different charts in the website. So does anyone have any thoughts on that? Basically just need to know how to pull out individual graphs website and then put our own text around them. We don't have to figure it out now, just who's our lead?
I have some experience in that area, but it's mostly just like embedding an iframe. I would just have to, take a look how feasible that is.
Okay.
So if you can just toss me on that one, at least for now, as a first pass.
Okay. Because I know you
if
have
not,
a lot of other things going on, so I end up owning this. I know there are some other folks that have
yeah,
this in college.
we might be able to honestly ping folks in SIG docs, since they have significantly more experience with this.
Okay.
Celeste would actually probably be a great person.
Okay. So maybe we post something in that channel and see where we can get some help. All right, well, that's a good start. Then the next action item is getting the chairs and leads persona going. And the link, DevStats link, will show you what I'm talking about when I'm referring to user persona, if you're new. So we basically have a number of personas who would be the users for consuming DevStats like information. So chairs and leads is one. And George and I have talked about chatting tomorrow. He's having a busy Wednesday. Does anybody else want to join? I know that's very ambiguous because we don't have a time.
Okay. I know a couple other people that might want to join.
Okay.
I just need to ping them. Most of them are on the West Coast, though. That's the only caveat.
Okay.
But yeah, I can reach out to them and ping back with that.
Okay. We basically just want to get their input.
Okay.
So if you're thinking of chairs and leads to get that input from, I don't think they need to come to the meeting. Or it would just be like asking them what data they would like. The purpose of this meeting would be more to package that user persona like we've tried to do with the program manager role. And then, when do we call it done? And how would our outreach process run? How would we like to ask different chairs and leads? So having a few in our pipeline is good, but then how would we like to reach out to everyone else? So I don't see this actually being longer than 20 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I can put out just a couple of feelers and see.
That'd be great. I think what we would need to do to help you is to just have some messaging prepared. So I will prepare that and share it with the two of you, George and you, and then we can blast that out.
Okay.
Messaging for outreach to chairs and leads. And as far as the other personas, I guess Paris isn't on the call today, but she was willing to take on the steering committee persona. And then we need a contributor persona driver. We had one person, but they seem to be rather busy. So if they surface again, then having two folks work on this is not a bad thing. But does anybody here want to actually drive the contributor persona? And basically what this would be is, I'm a contributor to Kubernetes. I would like to know how my SIG is performing, how I'm performing in relation to other contributors, get my personal stats, things like this. Whatever data points you think would be relevant to a contributor. We want to shape all of that into a package of data that we would then be able to offer to contributors in a consumable way. So if that sounds fun to you, this would be a great time to raise your hand. And you can also ping in Contribex later.
Yeah, this is
Oh, go
John.
ahead.
I'd be
Hi.
happy to. I will need to catch up on context, but I'm
Sure.
really interested in that area, and I'd be happy to be involved.
Oh, that would be great. Let me get you on here. So I can reach out to you afterwards and give you some context.
Are you in Kubernetes Slack already?
No, I do not
Okay.
think so. I can join the Slack though quite happily.
Yeah. Yeah, George is pasting the link.
Yay.
Or if like that'll honestly be the easiest way to just sort of get communication going.
Cool, there it is. Okay, great. Yes, and just for the record, yeah, we have Nicola is I'm the Josh, and Nicola's there. There's two of us.
Cool. Yeah. So. All right. Thank you. And then the open source program manager persona, if you click that link, you'll see that there's quite a lot of text there now. So that is rather well shaped. But George raised the issue last week. He'd like to add small companies needs. So if you're a program manager at a small company, what kind of data would you like? What would be useful to you in understanding your company's role in Kubernetes ecosystem? So we might need to find somebody who can provide that insight.
It's been a while, but Laura might be a good person.
Okay.
She hasn't been on the Contrix calls in a while, so I don't know how active she is currently, though.
Okay. I think this one we get some good response. I think we just need to have, again, the messaging.
Okay.
So really short. I'll write that as well.
Okay.
And then finally, we've had this feature request for graphs for all contributors. I think that was fulfilled last week by Wukash from CNCF. Last week, we determined that it partially solves the issue that George and Paris had been describing in weeks past about how to quickly obtain data around contributors' inputs and how are they contributing across the ecosystem. So that partially solves the issue, and I was wondering here if we can identify what else is needed, what is missing that we would want to request in some future context. And if we can't answer that right now, we can just punt till tomorrow.
I'm just looking through.
Yeah. It's fine if we can't answer it today. I just want to keep it on the radar screens. It seems
Okay.
to be important.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards probably punt to tomorrow, or give a shot in Contribex, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. That's it for me.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Does anyone have any DevStats questions?
I'm curious, is there a persona for specific SIG? Like I'm working for SIG node and we're looking at number of PRs active, number of PRs closed in a week, this kind of statistics. Maybe something about contributors would be also interesting. Is there such persona, or have you?
Well, it could either be contributor or it could be chair and lead. Like if you're a chair and a lead, and this doesn't mean that you have to be a chair and lead to look at the data point. It's just most aligned with the things that your role is looking for. But anybody in a SIG could actually do that. Go and look at the graph and see PRs per week close. I think that's achievable with the existing dashboards. It's just maybe not super easy to find. So I'm happy to help you find that.
Yeah,
and then you can see like
Node
how
PRs.
does it actually answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you need help finding that dashboard, ping me as well. I'm very keen on helping SIG Node.
Why don't we have that conversation in Contribx channel so that the both of us can
Dope.
support? Yeah, please raise that. That's great. Thank you for raising that. It's really great.
And thank you for working on this. We've needed.
Yeah,
we've
it's
needed
really
this for a long
great.
time. Thank
So,
you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And that'll take us to marketing. Is someone from marketing here to give an update? Okay. We'll kick it over then next to contributor documentation. I personally don't have any updates here. Joel, I know Eric is on vacation this week, but do you have any other updates?
All of our, all the major work that was in our current scope has been merged. That doesn't mean, of course, we're ever done with documentation. So keep us in the loop if there's challenges with that. Should that be absolutely perfect and have absolutely no changes after somebody goes through it? Well, that's just impossible. There's no way. So please don't be shy about letting us know about what T's were not crossed, I's were not dotted, and other things were just written completely incorrectly. But that's documentation for you. Yeah, then we did a blog post about our experience, hopefully to kind of improve. I've decided to quit using the word up level ever, but to improve process for documentation going forward and kind of trying to keep things aligned with growth. So we hope that we can kind of work on that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw the PR to the contributor site repo. I just honestly, like this weekend I tried to unplug and haven't had much of a chance to actually like look at it yet.
Oh, no problem.
I wonder for contributor side, there is a desire to put information about end-to-end testing in contributor side, but I think that one of the problem is complete documentation is hard. How do you feel about incomplete documentation? How do you feel about like progress and like to-dos in a contributor side? Is it acceptable?
I think it depends on who you ask. I think so. I think absolutely.
Yeah.
Some people have strongly said not to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, I would just be like, these were older, like one of the reasons why the contributor site took so long to get off the ground is that we were surfacing stuff like everyone has their own opinion on it. Surfacing the entire developer guide is definitely on our radar, and that should hopefully be happening. Like it's definitely slated for happening in the 1.20 release.
Okay.
Does that like? I know that contains at least some of the end-to-end testing documentation. Does that sort of cover your needs, or is there more E2E test type stuff that you're thinking of doing?
Yeah, there are documents about organizing an E2E test by categories, and specifically for Signal, there are like many different types of end-to-end tests, and unfortunately, documentation is not well structured, so we cannot just take Google Doc and like port it to Kubernetes.dev. So I think it will be step-by-step process. So you'll contribute like first iteration, and then you'll work on that and polish it. So I was just curious how polished do you want contributors to be from a get-go, and can we do like some notes on top? Like this is not like.
Have you looked in the last few days, Sergey? I'm not sure whether what you're speaking of is the pull request that we just merged.
Oh, okay.
On
Let me take a look.
testing.
Yeah, I haven't looked this week yet. Okay.
And where the documentation would likely live, at least for now, is in the Devil directory in our K community. And then we can selectively surface documents to the Kates.dev website. So if it's not like, get it out there, get it merged, and if we want to, we can then surface that specific. Like we can hold off on surfacing it until it's actually like ready to go. If it's like mostly just like a blank document. Also, putting a little bit more work your way, Joel, but like Joel and Eric are great when it comes to like information architecture and how documents should be laid out. So if you're looking for someone to like try and or help potentially organize that stuff, they might be a great person to poke and talk to.
Yeah, hit us up. Yeah, have a look and see if the recent work covers the stuff you need, and if not, reach out, and happy to help. Have a look at it. When Eric gets back, we'll be more effective, but I'm glad you're looking at it, Sergey. And if the stuff we did is in line with what you're looking for, test it for us.
Thank you. Sorry for not being up to date on this. I will take it.
That's all good.
It means it's useful. It's needed. It's great.
And no need to apologize. It's great that you're here.
Okay. Does anyone have any other contributor documentation items to talk about? Well, we will kick over to GitHub management, but I don't have any updates there. I don't think there are any updates there at the moment. Ihor, do you have any other ideas?
No.
Okay. We'll move right along to Slack Infra. Quick update, some folks might have seen it, but the announcement bot is live. This is a bot for our contributor comms group that can essentially send a message to one or more channels, so you can just like broadcast stuff out. And with that takes us to open mic and Orbit. I'll punt it right over to you.
Right, great. I was wondering, Ihor, I can give a bit of an introduction, but I'm wondering also if just from your side you want to say a few words, maybe to set the context for what we're going to share.
Yeah, sure. So I'd like to remind the current group of people that contributor experience that the first presentation about Orbit we made, Chris Anish from CNCF made it at the end of July. And we made a brief presentation about the tools and possibilities that Orbit as a community tracking tool can offer. However, we've decided that since we were close to KubeCon and we had different priorities within the community, or different arching priorities, so we decided to keep this conversation open and to continue discussing it after KubeCon, probably late August or early September. So we had a few conversations at CNCF with the Orbit team and at what are the benefits of the tool to this community and what can they offer. So happy to invite folks from Orbit here. So Nicholas, John, so please go ahead and provide your inputs on this one.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. So by way of some context, Orbit, we're a company. I met Chris at FOSDEM this year, and that's how the conversation started. He saw what we were building and said, "Oh, maybe that's something we could actually use in the CNCF for Kubernetes in particular." We're software engineers. We come from the developer relations space. So we're building a tool to help people do developer relations, to help manage developer communities, to see who's in the community, member profiles, the activity that they've done, and some reporting and things like that. I'll say nothing to the advanced extent of what's in DevStats probably today, because I know there's an amazing amount of data in there. We'll show you a demo and you'll see we have some reports. But for us, it's an opportunity to learn how a project like Kubernetes is handling the contributor experience. That's very near and dear to our heart. We hope that people use Orbit to provide a better contributor experience and to spend less time like tracking down all the little bits of information needed to do that, and more time just interacting with people and building the relationships. So without further ado, I'll see if we can share a screen. Maybe Nicola will help me here.
One moment. I need to.
Oh, if we need a special nod from the Zoom
Yep.
guy.
I'll just do that through here. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Everyone can see that. Everything you're seeing here is test data for a fake database called DynoBase. I hope there's not a real database called DynoBase. But everything in Orbit fits into a workspace. So what we're looking at right here is a workspace that contains members and activities. So one of the things that Orbit does, like a CRM for your community members, but without the sales aspect, just a place to bring in members and their profiles into one place. We have tags that we can apply to them. If we click on a community member here, this is Casey, generated with our test data. We can see a couple of things on their profile. This line right here is called the love. Love is an engagement score that comes from something called the Orbit model, which is the open source model that we build, that we're building the product on top of. So I can share a link later to our GitHub repository that is a README file that talks all about the Orbit model. And that's like a philosophy for community building and also a set of ways to measure engagement. So in Casey's case here, we can see, oh, there's a little bit of engagement in March and it looks like it's picked up throughout the months, and every member we can see the trend. So that becomes very useful if you want to see who are my members who've been very active recently or in the past. In the middle here, we see the timeline of what Casey has done, and this can go across different systems. Here we see some, we have a GitHub integration that pulls in pull requests, issues, issue comments, and creates activities for those. And then we also have a Twitter integration on the way, Discord, Slack, and we also have an API so that even if we don't have an integration yet, that's still something where data can be sent in. So that's a view looking at one member, and I can also jump to the activities tab where I can see everything about the aggregate number of things, the aggregate list of things people are doing in the community. So we have some really quirky test data that's coming here, but examples are things like watching a Twitch live coding stream. Orbit has some users that do a lot of live streaming on Twitch, and they use Orbit to track who's coming and watching my live streams. It's basically just a list of community members and the things that they're doing. And on the reporting side, I can go repository by repository or look at the whole community and see what's the number of members that I have, how is that changing over time, what are the members that I have in different orbit levels. We have 4, we call them ambassadors, users, fans, and observers, and these are the concentric circles of activity around projects. Maps pretty well to things like a core team, maintainers, and users. And we can also look at activity that might be specifically on GitHub or on Twitter. And again, I'm happy to give a demo in the future too that shows more data. I think in this test workspace, we just have 75 or 80 members, but we have communities that are in Orbit that are in the tens of thousands of members to track. And the last thing I'll show you is a feature that we have called actions that we're just working on now, where based on a milestone that a contributor can have, this really gets directly to contributor experience. Like Carrie here merging their first pull request, Orbit will surface that information and say, oh yeah, this is the first PR, and then provide a couple of options for actions that can be taken on that. Maybe that can be replying directly on GitHub, that could be something with a contributor license agreement, could be following on Twitter, or just sending a personal message if they have an email registered. And that way it just saves a little bit of time from having to remember or track down who had a first pull request, or who had their 10th, or who had their 100th contribution. Can set it up so those important events bubble up automatically and then you can take action on them. So I'll stop there because I don't want to take too much time. I'm happy to answer any question. Please go ahead.
First big question for me is, so how do you actually build this profile?
It's built through integrations, and it can also be edited or added to manually. So if I want to go here for Juliana, then I can do that. But the most of the members are built through the GitHub or the Twitter integration. So all the data that you see here comes from those fields, the company, location, et cetera.
Is it a org level plugin, or is it something that every user has to associate themselves?
It's a GitHub org level plugin.
Okay.
It's a GitHub app that installs right at the organization level, and then depending on the repositories that are selected, it will start to those historically and also going forward. Mm-hmm.
Is we collectively have 6 different orgs. Then like I know I looked briefly at like the Slack integration, some of the other things. How were you integrating that?
Yeah, we can have multiple GitHub orgs per workspace. That's no problem. So the activities and the members that come in would be from all those different areas. It usually depends on the goals of having all the members in one place. We have some organizations where they have a separate workspace for each GitHub organization because they kind of see that each one as an individual community. But then I'd say the more common thing is any organization on GitHub, they put it in the same Orbit workspace. And that way, even activity from the same member, the same GitHub handle across all of those different organizations just goes into one person. And so if we have someone that's contributing across all of those different GitHub organizations, that will all show up in their timeline, and they would be able to see which repository it was.
Yeah. Sorry, did someone else have a question? And okay, so is it on to the user to make that Twitter mapping? Like, do they have to log into the profile and do that?
Let's see. For the Twitter mapping and the Twitter to GitHub mapping, we'll do that automatically if it's the same handle. So we have a set of rules where we try to see if 2 members across different platforms are the same person. We're incorporating things like matching on the name, matching on an email if they've publicized that in other place, or handles. We also support the ability to merge 2 members. So if we bring someone from GitHub and from Twitter, and you as the community manager know it's the same person, you can go in and open the merge dialog. That person will be one from.
Yeah. I would completely pull out matching by username because we've had other instances where people have tried to spoof profiles. Like, that is something like I would never do unless it's like, Twitter verified account.
Yeah, and it might be something we add to our roadmap is some configuration around how you would like the profiles to be merged.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing is just like, oh man, what was I gonna say? Like, I totally had a thought and kind of brain farted there for a sec.
We're happy to share links and all of that. We're in kind of an early access mode. We're just a year old as a company, so I won't say that Orbit is ready to solve all the community challenges of the world. But we're happy to let anybody in the group sign up, create an account, plug in a personal GitHub if you like to see, or personal Twitter if you want to see either of your communities there. And it'd be great for us just to get the feedback and get thoughts from that.
Like, for me specifically, like I'm looking for useful statistics and to break down like sort of more granular like dev stats type thing. When it comes to like engagement in Twitter, that doesn't matter nearly as much for like our group from a contributor like persona type view. That if I was in DevRel at a company, that would matter more. But like,
Mhm.
even when it comes to engaging with our main Kubernetes.io account, that's not something we normally use.
Mhm.
We do have a specific contributor focused account, but that tends to be focused on like announcements. The majority of what I would personally be looking for is more being able to dive into the data closer to dev stats or be able to build like more dynamic dashboards
Okay, cool.
as a contributor.
Yeah, one thing we can do, because again, we don't have a lot of data in this workspace, so there's some reports I can't show, but that's definitely something we're trying to make more powerful, and maybe we can look at a couple of the dev stats things. If there is a way that you can help create a dashboard or a report or something that doesn't exist already, that's definitely something we can do. Probably just have to look and see what information is hard to get today, and if there's something we can help there.
Yeah, honestly, probably Lori has put together like the big spreadsheet of the various like personas and the different dashboards that we're looking for that doesn't currently exist on DevStats.
Yeah, that's
just to package them better.
Yeah. Want to learn more about what's in that spreadsheet for sure. And I might there's a lot of cells, so it might take me a little bit to digest some of it, but that's really good questions, and I'm really interested to see how we could get some answers to those.
Where like just looking at, or I think it would be more useful is for like smaller projects that are trying to grow their contributor base in its current form. Kubernetes has around 50,000 contributors and roughly 3,000, I would say, like active contributors, with about 1,300 org members. And just from the general engagement stuff in there, I'm just not quite sure what we would be able to get out of it that isn't there in dev stats already. I'm not trying to
No,
be
sure.
blunt or curtail, like stop the idea. It's just like with the contributor like SIG lead type hat on.
Yeah, no,
Wasn't quite sure.
No, that's what kind of some work that we want to dig into and see what if there is something there, and maybe some things on the personal side. There's the aggregate data, but I'm wondering if maybe there's a part of the Kubernetes community or a certain segment of contributors that maybe it's the active ones, the 3,000, where it's interesting to have like a timeline of activity at the individual level, or even a smaller thing. A lot of the what we've done so far with folks using Orbit isn't to like try to put the whole community in there, but maybe a subset of the community that's really high touch, that's very where the contributor experience is the most important. But that's just a couple of ideas off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think that is important. I think that is directly related to the contributor persona, because if you are in a performance review and your contributions to this project are a factor in you're getting promoted or not, then you're going to want to have that data to show your involvement over time. I think one of the challenges is that if you scratch the surface of a commit, there's a lot of context there. It's like you could have one super valuable commit all quarter, right? Or a pull request all quarter that's just required a lot of work and alignment. And that story needs to be told somehow so that it's not like, oh, you just did one pull request this quarter. You could have delivered a super valuable part of the project. So just how do you actually support the data is a challenge. I don't know if any tool can actually do that. It requires some fleshing out by the contributor themselves to describe what they've been doing. But
Yeah, one thing we'd worked on a little is a way to publicly show contribution timelines, and make that easy, and do that in a way that's like nicely designed and really something that a contributor would want to show off and want to be proud of. So maybe that's something we could talk about. We spent some time thinking about that, because the timeline is there, so we can say that these are the 5 pull requests this month, and maybe even this one in particular has a lot of reactions, a lot of thumbs up and thumbs ups and hearts and things like that. So maybe we should, lead with that one, and then fill in the other contribution activity around it. We've actually thought about that a little bit from how we design side and how we might show that. But usually it's the community managers who are logging into Orbit, but it's an interesting idea to have the contributors themselves log in to see their own contribution history. That's not something we've thought about that much, but it could be really interesting in context like this for, I want to see my contribution history.
Maybe that context from those contributions and the reflection and the
like
the
a
work
journal,
that was
journal
behind
my contribution journal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm afraid too that some of the icon counting would not be the most reliable data as well, because there can be a super quiet dev who just gets something done without a bunch of noise around it, and they
I would
should
actually
be
say most of our
penalized because there's no noise. You know what I mean?
I would say the most of our meaningful work doesn't have a lot of noise.
Yeah, most of it doesn't. It just gets done and it has a huge impact. Like all the patch release work, which requires a lot of dedication and consistency, that's not counted necessarily.
Have you engaged with the chaos folk, like the chaos community folks?
Yeah, we've gotten to know Georg and Viturgia folks and the Chaos. So stopped by Chaos Con when it was happening at the same time as FOSDEM. I think so. Yeah, I've gotten to know them a little bit. We still don't have any chaos specific metrics inside of Orbit, but that's mostly just a limitation on time and just not being able to go deep with them. But we're big fans of the work that they're doing.
I was gonna say, if you want a group to talk to, they're probably the right people to ping on some of picking up community health metrics.
Yeah.
In general, Kubernetes itself doesn't really have like dedicated community managers. Contribix is sort of that role, but it's we aren't managing every contributor or anything like that. We wouldn't be creating profiles for people.
Yeah, I still got it. Wait, if the profiles were created automatically, is that valuable, or is that just not?
So I
look at a lot.
The big problem, some people might be okay with that, but I know some of our more privacy focused is just why did you install this in the org? Why is my information now going over here? Yeah, it's just why is this connected to my my Twitter? They would get very upset that you're that are essentially building an automatic profile of these people.
Yeah, that sensitivity is not lost on us. Something we thought about a bit, and every community has its own norms and level of sensitivity around that. Every person too. So that it's good for us to be aware. I appreciate the candor and all of that always.
I think the biggest challenge is
Oh no, go for it.
Thank you. I think the biggest challenge here is how do you measure value? I don't know if anybody's really figured this out. Because there's so many ways to interpret value, and so much of the value of a project is not necessarily something you can count, at least automatically. So lines of code, well, oftentimes it's better to remove code. So you can't go with that. All the likes and such, we covered that. So how could you actually quantify for, say, a contributor who wants to show their involvement in this project to their boss, to their SIG, to say, hey, look, I'm doing most of the work. Can you all help me? Let's get more of a team effort going to empower the other contributors in a SIG who are their peers. based on reliable data. So much of this is about being able to trust the data, that it really is an accurate depiction of one's involvement. So,
I absolutely second that, and it's such a fascinating part about this project or any open source project, because those incentives are not just rough metrics, they become cultural. And people talk to me about the documentation in terms of how many pull requests should I make, how many lines of writing should I make, and that's never a good measure of documentation. So the fact that it feeds back in would cause concern if it's not really incentivizing like you're talking about.
Yeah, no easy problem. Maybe the signals from other contributors is one I've seen people use in the past. So if and you can kind of get that on GitHub with reactions to pull requests or issues, but even that's pretty hard to just automatically. So you always need some kind of story element to go along with the data, I think, to understand the full picture.
That context is like really important to being able to understand any graph.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
long journey.
Kendall actually brings up a good point too. Do you want to mention, or do you want me to?
Sure. Yeah, like the OpenStack community has a couple different things, kind of like DevStats too, and at various points in time they've been like very popular and lots of people look at them, and then there's a lot of gamification that happens. I know that there are certain companies that'll tell their employees that like, oh, you need to have this many patches every month or whatever, and then the like statistics really stop meaning anything because it's a bunch of like, oh, I fixed this spelling mistake here and here and here, and it's 100 different things, and it should have just been one pull request or patch or whatever. And so it's like really scary to like quantify things because gamification always happens, and keeping context with all of that too is hard. Like how do you quantify a contributor? Well, you can say they've done this many reviews, which is good, but there's a lot of things that you like can't quantify, like, oh, they spent this many hours working on this document, and they worked on the document with however many other people, and that's hard to capture.
Yeah.
Brings up the point in my mind about the value of not doing anything. Like there's so much emphasis on doing stuff and being busy, just shipping things. And sometimes the most valuable thing one can do is not to ship anything at all, but to actually help other people look at what they're shipping and decide if it's actually the right thing.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't
Supporting
be a race,
The gentle way of saying no.
I will just stop in drop in because I know I've got to leave in 4 minutes. So I just wanted to ask, is there maybe someone, Lori, if it's you or someone else, where I could keep the conversation going? So I feel like maybe we've had a little bit of time to scratch the surface, and I know that we've talked a lot about the stats, and I want to get a better sense of just things that could be useful. So maybe if there's someone I can follow up with.
Yeah, you can drop a line in the Contribex channel, and then we can pick it up from there. I've been basically looking at a lot of PR velocity, which is a multi-layered effort that will take time, because the reasons why velocity isn't super perfect in SIGs is there's many reasons. So it takes a while to figure all the reasons out, and it's always, for every SIG, that's a different culture in itself. So you want to talk to people and find out what their reality is, what are their challenges and obstacles, and then decide what's reasonable. And it never will be perfect because that's just the way it goes. But certainly to see a faster velocity, closing more things out and seeing workloads for different SIGs go down over time, that would be a goal, because they carry a huge workload in many of these SIGs, and it's just a fire hose. And so how can we support them to get behind process changes that will slow down that flow.
Sorry, I just noticed that there were Sergey, you had something on also the open mic discussion. I completely missed that. I'm so sorry.
It's a 1 minute thingy, and it's not important.
Okay. Well, if you want to, we can follow up in Slack about it. I hate that I missed that and didn't give you enough time to talk about it.
It's okay.
Speaking about Orbit, also want to highlight that we discussed this tool briefly within the GitHub administration team at the recent meeting, and it seems there are no issues with potentially enable this tool for Kubernetes or from the technical perspective. So I want to double check with Josh and Nicholas if this tool is making any changes to GitHub, but as far as I know, it's enabled and read on the mode if we'll enable it.
Yeah.
So probably the next step would be to discuss the value of this tool for the community outside of the current meeting in Slack with Laura and other folks who could be interested in evaluating that. And yeah, that's it. And thank you for sharing the tool here, Nicholas and Josh.
Yeah, thanks for your attention. Thanks for listening.
Good thing. With that, we have 1 minute left. Is there anything anyone really wants to say at the last possible moment? Okay, well, I think we can call it there. Thank you for coming, everyone. I will see you all around Slack and probably at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.